In fact, go wash your hands. Well, you're not at work right now. Are you at work right now? Cool.
I am so not at work right now.
Well, to our listeners, if you're at work right now, go wash your hands.
Yeah.
But thank you for listening.
And we're back.
Hey, welcome back. Have you figured out what FNG means yet? The hint is there is no shame in being the new guy. You just don't want to slip into being the FNG. And sometimes that FNG is your boss.
That happens.
In this industry, there is often a change of management or at the executive level at work. And I think we will all agree that usually that sucks.
I'm making a little face because I have just been promoted to a different shop. I like to think I'm doing well, but I have some thoughts on this, but we will kind of jump back into it. That like there's a way to become not the FNG as the manager.
As the manager, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really important.
Because let's just say very hypothetically, not really talking about any real human living or deceased that would have any legally actionable claim against me for this. And besides, he's a real dick. He never listened to employees at work, so I doubt he's listening to this. Essentially, there was a turnover of the food and beverage director where I was working, and brought in this new guy who I am absolutely certain the owners loved in the interview, because he says all those things owners like about, streamlining and profitability and cutting labor and
KPIs.
Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts on this in general. First of all, our regular customers are not our regular customers because the F&B dude is good at his P&L reports. They're our regular customers because of the job I and my staff do, and the chef and his staff do, to put out good food, put out good service. But also, he came in blazing, saying, well, you guys have never blah, blah, blah. Well, we're going to change that. And basically, without regard, without spending any time to learn who the managers of the various departments, the various rooms in the building were, he kind of came in with his mind made up that things need to change. And first of all, maybe spend a shift in my room first. Maybe, check out how a service goes. Maybe even come back for one of the busier nights and see when we as a room are in the weeds, and not just, slide in when everything's kind of groovy and then go have a drink at the bar or whatnot. He's one of those people who you learn what not to do from, because
I've had so many bosses like that.
Immediately, the management staff, your most important people, if you want to talk, view it from that lens, comes in with very little respect for this guy. Already, I know of at least 2 people who are looking at other options because they just long-term don't want to work for this dude. Hypothetically. I mean, I'm not talking about, anyway.
Nobody's specific here.
If he knows what he's doing, then he doesn't need my help, right?
There's that from the management standpoint. I think as a new manager, and I was fortunate enough to have an intercompany promotion, so I was working for the same company. I knew the expectations. But one of the first things I did when I knew that this was a potential change, and I was still interviewing for the position, it wasn't set in stone. First thing I did was have dinner with the assistant general manager and be like, what do you like about this place? What do you think you're doing really well? Because he was operating solo. The general manager for the store that I'm now operating moved to a different location because the general manager for that location decided not to come back from paternity leave. He and his partner realized that they could function on one salary for a little while, adopted a baby who was having anxiety issues at like months old. And they're like, wow, I can stay home and take care of this child. And more power to that guy for like recognizing his family was important. More power to the former general manager at my store for going, you know what? I want this challenge. I've been working with these people now for a couple months. Let me give them some consistency, because that shop had very poor consistency in management. And so the shop that I stepped into, I said, guy. Like, what do you feel you're doing really well? What do you feel you really need to step back from? Those are the gaps I want to fill in for you, because he is very well liked by our team, and I'm becoming that person as well. But I'm like, how can I make your day better? Let's start at the top, because as far as I'm concerned, and as far as our bosses are concerned, this is a successful shop. How do we make it better? And
Well,
that's, there's a start right there.
And
Like,
in a couple weeks, I do have planned that management styles thing, because as a manager in banquets, when that event is going, my role is support staff. Like, I'm here to make sure the bartender has everything they need, that the servers have what they need. That sure, part of it is to handle the host and make sure their needs are addressed, but that is not the time to scoot off and do my computer work. That's the time to be in the room and make sure that everything is flowing well. But again, management style there. And I brought up SOPs, standard operating procedures. In terms of training, they're incredibly useful tools sometimes, because I have seen the ones written that literally are: unlock the door, turn on light, turn on coffee machine. Sure, if you really want to, every single potential step, put it on there. Yeah, but more or less, when I'm making an SOP, I want to have absolutely the steps of service, but the philosophy behind it in there too. Why do I set it up like this? Why do I want the servers to pre-bus their tables? Nobody needs to know why to unlock the door or why to turn on the lights, but sure, put it in there. Sometimes having that checklist, all right, because now I'm thinking of my bar setup, and sometimes literally having stock your juices, stock your sodas, make sure all of your liquor bottles are aligned and all that. It is useful, and sometimes it's overkill. I think there's a happy medium.
Absolutely. And like, if you don't have enough on that SOP, invariably you're going to miss something. Like,
right.
You're doing brunch service, you don't have stock the orange juice on there, and that new bar back goes, well, didn't say stock the orange juice, so now we're out of mimosas.
Well, and really, my suggestion to people who do have to train a lot of other staff, if you don't have an SOP, have a notebook with you one day and basically just write a little 5-8 word thing of just step by step what you do, how you go through your day, because that's a pretty easy way to then turn around like, well, okay, these parts are mine, but these parts are the staff, and these are the, not just the expectation, but kind of the, the order of operations. And it really, it might make your life easier as somebody who then has to train a lot of people, because then instead of having to spend an hour repeating yourself of going over the same things over and over again, you could just hand them, all right, don't go crazy, 8 to 10 pages, double spaced. I don't know. You could find some samples online, look at a few, but make your own. Again, in banquets, I was looking at some of the hotel, service SOPs, and again, it just, some of them are ridiculous, and just some points that are not necessary. And I don't like extraneous detail if I don't need it. If this is a training tool, you want that to be detailed but simple.
Yeah.
Short sentences, strong verbs. Keep it to that. Anyway, any other training suggestions you've got, Trey?
Well, I think it's important to have a certain amount of detail that will feel superfluous to a trained person. If you don't have enough detail in there when training, it will be too overwhelming and leave too much room for that trainee to make it up. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely that benefit to having really detailed SOPs. I'm working in, a 7-unit operation that has the same opening checklist and the same closing checklist for everybody. And do I need to be told to turn on the lights? No, at some point I'm going to turn on the lights. But if I have a new shift lead or somebody who's been working nights all school year and suddenly here it comes, middle of June, it's their first opening shift, and they're like, oh, I never unlocked the door, because they've never had to unlock the door before. And like having it on there is like, there is that value in it where for somebody who does it 5 days a week, it feels so silly until that moment when you walk up half an hour after you're open, because that's your starting time, and that person hasn't bothered to open the shop because they never unlocked the door.
And to that point, airline pilots have the checklist that literally has every minute thing that might be forgotten, because you can't forget it. And really, sure, maybe, professional airline cockpit or an emergency room are a little bit higher stakes than, opening the shop. But at the same time, if it's good enough for them, then, maybe we can at least use that as a basis. So
Absolutely.
I will also say, so the other end of the spectrum to me, the more useless training, when the pandemic hit and the restaurant I was working at closed the dining room, I'm impatient. I wasn't going to wait to see what was going to happen. And so I took a job at the place that was still busy in town, the grocery store, and got a job at the fish counter at a, let's say, nationally known grocery chain. It's funny, the end of my first shift, the department head asked me to apply for the open assistant department head job because, and by the time I left, basically I was running the department because I take food handling seriously, especially when it comes to seafood. I don't want to make anyone sick. And it turns out that I was doing the bulk of the cleaning, and that became evident as soon as I left. But this particular chain has a lot of online learning, and it's going through just the online training courses. You're sitting at a computer, clicking next, and then watching a 45-minute video, and then you click next. I'm sure that there is some person whose learning method this absolutely aligns with. To me, I'm just bored out of my mind immediately, and I'm just kind of standing there like, can I click next yet? Sure, I get it. This is a national chain, and they need their training to be standardized across the board, and this is the easiest way to do it, because it is very difficult to send a single group of trainers to 300 some different units. I don't know. I would suggest, if you are in HR and you're the head of the designing the training program, the flash video training stuff, just make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure that it's necessary, especially the length of some of them. I don't need to be told 3 times in 3 different ways, though. Again, I get the repetition is how some people learn, but I got it the first time. And not only that, but I've had some form of food handler or ServSafe accreditation for a couple decades now. So sure, yeah, remind me to wash my hands after I pick my nose. That's a good idea. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm on the record being for that. In fact, go wash your hands. Well, you're not at work right now. Are you at work right now? Cool.
I am so not at work right now.
Well, to our listeners, if you're at work right now, go wash your hands. Yeah. But thank you for listening. All right. And anyway, I'm going to actually get us to our last break here, but there's one more set of stories I do want to get to. So come right back, and we will see you in a minute.